Shana Tova. There's a often quoted story from the Talmud about a person who's interested in converting to Judaism. And he approaches the two great sages of his time, who I think have already gotten a mention today, Hillel and Shammai. To each one of them, he says the same thing: convert me on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. Shammai rejects him outright, even shooing him away with a stick. But Hillel accepts the challenge. He says, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the entire Torah. All the rest is commentary on it. Now, go and learn." If you've heard this story before, you might be a little surprised. Many of us heard this story told in a way where the prospective convert's request is that his teacher stand on one foot. This guy must have heard that rabbis have a tendency to talk and go on, and he just wanted to get the short answer. You might feel the same way, which is why I'll be giving the rest of this sermon while standing on one foot. Just kidding. I also always thought this was how the story went until I was reintroduced to it recently by my teacher, Rabbi Sharon Cohen-Anisfeld, who shared a powerful Hasidic teaching on the story. But it's true, the person does not ask Hillel or Shammai to stand on one foot, but he wants to receive the Torah as he himself stands on one foot. Now, this request is maybe even more confusing. If it isn't about impatience, why put himself in this awkward posture while he learns Torah? Enter Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, otherwise known as the Pri Haaretz, the 18th century Hasidic Rebbe of the community in Tiberias. The Pri Haaretz reads this story and looks for the question behind the question. He says that the ger, the convert, who comes before Hillel, feels as if he himself is standing on one foot. The world feels unstable, and he himself is out of balance, wobbly, unable to stand. He's buffeted by the events and challenges of this world and feels that they will knock him over at any moment. What the ger is seeking, says the Pri Haaretz, is the ability to stand in strength, to have a kind of faith that will strengthen him and enable him not only not to fall when confronted with these challenges, but actually to pull himself up and raise himself higher. The Hebrew word for this is chizuk, from chazak, strong. Chizuk is strengthening, encouragement. And because Hillel's response deals with a moral principle, I read the question in the same light. When I am surrounded by moral corruption, how do I remain upright? When the chaos of our world, the events in this country and in Israel threaten to destabilize us, when it feels like we could easily topple over, we turn to our tradition for some chizuk, something that will keep us upright and keep us going. This is a question many of us have been asking, especially in the past year. It's a question I've received, a question I've been asking. We've seen the undermining of democracy and due process, and the dehumanization of queer and trans people, women, and of immigrants. The cruelty of mass incarceration and deportation, of separating families, holding people in cages without access to basic necessities. It's happening all over the country, including in our own community at the ICE facility in Burlington. We read the news, we see the videos, we worry about neighbors, friends, and family. And it's so difficult to know how to respond when it occurs on such a huge scale. How do we take action, but also how do we respond spiritually and emotionally to such affronts to human dignity? The person who comes to Hillel, as the Pri Haaretz understands him, is worried about falling over. For us, we might worry about falling into depression, falling into inaction, or failing to respond to the demands of this moment. So how does Hillel's answer provide that chizuk, that encouragement and strength? He says, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That's not such a high bar. It doesn't strike me at first as so profound. But he doesn't stop there. Hillel continues. He says, this is the entire Torah. All the rest is just commentary on it. Now go and learn. What will we discover when we go and learn? When we view the Torah through Hillel's eyes, as all commentary on this golden rule. So the traditional rabbinic understanding is that Hillel's declaration, what's hateful to you, do not do to your fellow, which is not itself found in the Torah, they say it's actually an alternative formulation of ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. Rabbi Akiva would later declare loving our neighbor to be the greatest principle of the Torah. I read an excellent book this summer which makes a similar point and can help us with that project of reading the Torah through Hillel's eyes. Judaism is about love, by Rabbi Shai Held of Hadar. Rabbi Held teaches that the true essence of Judaism is love. In this book, the mitzvah to love your neighbor as yourself is part of a pattern of commanding love in widening circles. We first experience love for our families, then we're commanded to love our neighbor, which the rabbis understood to be our fellow Jews, and then the circle is expanded even wider. Only a few verses after this commandment to love our neighbor, we read, "The stranger who lives among you will be like one of your citizens, and you shall love them as you love yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." The word for stranger, ger, refers to a non-Israelite who lives among Israelites, an immigrant. In later rabbinic readings, the word will come to mean convert, such as the ger from our story, but it always retains that original meaning. As Jews, we unfortunately have not only the story of slavery in Egypt to teach us compassion and concern for others, but the times throughout Jewish history when our people have experienced exile, inquisition, and incarceration, and of course, much worse, in concentration camps. We know the vulnerability, and we also know the hope of immigrating to new places. The Torah commands us no less than 36 times about how to treat immigrants. Most of the time, we're told not to oppress them, but twice we're actually commanded to love them. Once in Leviticus, which I quoted a moment ago, and again in Deuteronomy. "For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, providing him with food and clothing. You too must love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." So here we have once again that reminder of the compassion that our own historical experience demands of us. But we also have something new. Rabbi Held teaches the obligation for Israel to love the stranger is interwoven with an affirmation that the God of Israel loves the stranger. Loving the stranger is a form of walking in God's ways or imitating God. If you want to love God, love those whom God loves. Love those who are vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. And what does it mean that God loves the stranger? God provides him with food and clothing. So Rabbi Held asks, how does God go about doing that, providing the stranger with food and clothing? And answers, by commanding us to love the stranger. We are the means by which God expresses God's love. We serve as God's agents and emissaries. We serve as God's hands. God's love we deliver. When we read the whole Torah as commentary on this principle of not doing what's hateful to our fellow, we find a tradition and a theology that is based on love. Loving not only those who are like us, but all those in need of care. It's so clear at this moment that our tradition and our collective memory call on us to act with loving kindness towards all those who are vulnerable right now. But if we go back to our story of Hillel and the convert, we'll remember that in the reading of the Pri Haaretz, that Hasidic reading, This is not a story about what Judaism demands of us, but actually a story of what it offers us. The prospective convert has no obligation to follow what Hillel says. He's focused on what the Torah can offer him. He finds the strength that he seeks in his connection with and responsibility to others, and chooses Judaism because of it. We are called into the responsibility of loving our neighbor and the stranger, but we're also given this responsibility as a gift and an opportunity to live our lives more fully connected to those around us, with more love and more compassion, and stronger bonds between ourselves and all our fellow human beings. This idea that taking moral action can actually give something to the person who acts, and not only the one on whose behalf they act, it's not a new idea, and it's not only found in our Hasidic texts. The Pri Haaretz insistence that moral responsibility is itself a source of chizuk is very similar to the teachings of the environmental activist and Buddhist philosopher Joanna Macy of blessed memory. Joanna Macy wrote about confronting the climate crisis and the social injustices of our time with what she calls active hope. She describes two simultaneous stories unfolding in our time. The Great Unraveling, where ecological destruction, social injustice, and economic instability are pulling apart the fabric of life. But also the Great Turning, a global shift toward life-sustaining societies. The Great Turning means transforming our values, actions, and systems to nurture justice and ecological balance. Both the Great Unraveling and the Great Turning are happening at the same time, and our choices help determine which story we advance. So as we confront the Great Unraveling, sometimes it's difficult to see and feel the hope and possibility of the Great Turning. But this also depends on our orientation to hope. Macy writes, active hope involves identifying the outcomes we hope for and then playing an active role in bringing them about. We don't limit our choices to outcomes that seem likely. Instead, we focus on what we truly, deeply long for, and then we proceed to take steps in that direction. We can rise to the occasion with wisdom, courage, and care, or we can shrink from challenge, blot it out, or look away. With active hope, we consciously choose to bring out our best responses so that we might surprise even ourselves by what we bring forth. So let's try it. Imagine the world you want to live in, that you want your children or grandchildren to live in. Imagine the world as it could be if the love and empathy we feel for our fellow human beings was truly at the center. That is our hope, the world we long for. Active hope is when we take that vision and work to bring it into reality. Joanna Macy calls the work of building the world we long for the Great Turning. In Judaism, we have our own Great Turning. We call it teshuvah. Teshuvah, which means literally to return or to turn towards, and in practice means to work towards the best possible version of ourselves, the best possible version of humanity, which already exists deep within us. It requires both inner and outer work, in our minds and in our hearts and in our actions. It takes all kinds of forms and needs every single one of us. Materially supporting those who are vulnerable, actively resisting hate, violence, and injustice, and strengthening relationships within community to give ourselves that chizuk we need to keep going. All of these are already happening within our community at Emunah, and there are so many ways to participate. Many of you took part in our campaign to raise funds and volunteer to support a refugee family this year, showing an extraordinary outpouring of care and generosity, a true example of active hope. The GBIO committee has continued building relationships with other faith communities so we can work together for justice. And our social justice committees are educating and organizing us to take action on a range of issues. You've brought your presence and your prayers to the Prayers for Liberty marches, defending democracy and due process, and done so many other things in so many ways that each of you are already involved in. For the past several months, Emunah members, including Rabbi Lerner and myself, have joined the demonstrations which occur weekly outside the ICE office in Burlington. These gatherings, which now draw over 600 people across 2 days, shine a light on the cruelty of detention and deportation, while also offering solidarity to those impacted. The Emunah members who participate tell me how much hope it brings them to see so many people who care and to take action in line with their values. It's been particularly meaningful to me as well. And that is the power of active hope. In a world of hatred, we come together in love to build the future we long for. I invite you to join us. Come check it out Wednesdays and Thursdays between 11 and 1 for these peaceful demonstrations, or otherwise find your own way of accessing active hope by taking action. If you ever feel like the Ger from the story, that the challenges of this world threaten to topple you over, that you are standing on one foot amidst the cruelty and the chaos, trying to find your footing, I want to offer you another image, one from the Jewish philosopher Franz Rosenzweig. He said, "None of us has solid ground under our feet. Each of us is only held up by the neighborly hands grasping us by the scruff, with the result that we are each held up by the next one, and often, indeed most of the time, hold each other up mutually. All this mutual upholding of physical impossibility becomes possible only because the great hand from above supports all these holding human hands by their wrists. It is this, and not some non-existent solid ground under one's feet, that enables all the human hands to hold and to help. There is no such thing as standing, only being held up." So this year, let's find ways of holding each other up. Let's take this season of Teshuvah as our invitation to turn in love towards neighbors and strangers, to turn toward the work of justice, and to turn towards one another for strength. Even when the world feels unstable and we feel like we're standing on one foot, our tradition offers us chizuk, the steadiness and hope that come from acting with compassion and moral clarity. May we enter this new year filled with the vision of the world we long for clear in our minds and the willingness to take part in building it together. Shana Tova u'metuka.